the time has come for you and the world to see the B-21 Raider.
The U.S. Navy is striving to fight China in the Pacific, but it might be the Air Force's B-21 Raider that truly shakes things up. In recent years, the United States Navy has greatly increased the frequency of freedom of navigation operations, FLNOPS, in the South China Sea. This spike in Pacific activity may be directly traced to China's aggressive actions throughout the area, seeking to impose their unlawful claims of ownership over the extensively traveled part of water. Power struggle in the South China Sea. The South China Sea, a length of ocean that stretches between Vietnam and the Philippines, is subject to various overlapping claims of ownership, many of which are backed by international law and universally recognized conventions. That is, except for China's claim, which stretches thousands of miles beyond the historically recognized economic exclusion zones any nation can claim within 200 miles of their coast, and is supported by both seizing and building additional islands in the region. China's claim over this region, they believe, is grounded by historical tradition, but international courts have declared those claims to be invalid. China has now responded by swiftly growing its fleet and strengthening the number of ships in both its Coast Guard and even its maritime militia. Combined, these forces provide China hundreds of boats in the region, many of which are deployed to physically restrict other nations from access to broad expanses of water. This action had driven Vietnamese employees off of oil rigs in their own territorial seas, pushed fishing enterprises out of their nation's economic exclusion zones, and have produced a substantial degree of friction among Pacific countries, and even governments as far away as Europe. That's where freedom of navigation operations come in. South China Sea FLNOPS are excursions by military warships over regions of ocean that China deems their territory, but that the rest of the world acknowledges as international seas. The United States and a number of other nations execute these operations explicitly to reaffirm international rules and to physically convey a repudiation of China's illegitimate claims. However, as tensions between China and other world powers continues to grow, developing hypersonic technologies threaten to offer China a seemingly unassailable edge. China's hypersonic anti-ship missiles represent a severe danger. China has a vast arsenal of ballistic and cruise missiles at its disposal, including more than one hypersonic missile platform. Hypersonic missiles have become the source of the latest arms race, with China, Russia, the United States, and recently, Japan all rushing to field missiles that are capable of achieving hypersonic speeds. In order to be considered hypersonic, a missile must be able to sustain flight at speeds in excess of Mach 5. The high-speed Chinese missiles, like the DF-17 and the CM-401, can make them practically hard to intercept and delivers a significant amount of kinetic energy transfer upon contact. In other words, these missiles could easily knock down numerous Navy boats via sheer strength alone, without the necessity for an explosive warhead. Of course, the inclusion of a warhead makes these platforms all more lethal. While the CM-401 is considered a short-range anti-ship cruise missile, the DF-17 promises hypersonic speeds and a range that might reach up to 1,000 miles from Chinese coastlines. At that distance, reliable targeting becomes a considerable challenge, which has led China to build a supersonic drone developed expressly to deliver up-to-the-minute targeting data of enemy ships as the DF-17 closes with its target. Hypersonic missiles can possibly neutralize America's carrier strength. The U.S. Navy, and indeed America, relies on a fleet of Nimitz and Ford-class supercarriers as a strong means of force projection. Each of these carriers contains dozens of planes and thousands of personnel, allowing them to deliver more firepower per carrier strike group than many whole nations can field. However, these gigantic airstrips at sea provide China a big target for its hypersonic anti-ship missiles. The F/A-18 Super Hornets and F-35C Joint Strike Fighters America can field aboard carriers have a combat radius of only about 500 miles, which means America's carriers can't get to within striking distance of Chinese shores without putting themselves at significant risk of being hit by China's hypersonic missiles. A variety of projects are ongoing to expand the range of each carrier's weaponry, but these programs have been regarded by some as stopgaps that may aid in a fight, but that don't fully balance China's hypersonic edge. B-21 Raider. A deep penetration bomber China won't see coming. And that's where the Air Force just could rescue the day. Their newest bomber, the Northrop Grumman B-21 Raider, is set to enter service in the mid-2020s and claims to be the most sophisticated stealth bomber ever built. Northrop Grumman has done an excellent job of keeping secrets associated with the B-21, but some things are fairly safe to assume. This new bomber will be able to avoid detection. Like no bomber ever has before it, it will have global strike capabilities, and it would likely lead the way in a high-end conflict against a nation like China. While F-35Cs could be able to escape detection to close with Chinese missile systems on land, they wouldn't have the range to reach their objective, destroy it, and return to the ship. But B-21s very likely could. The diplomatic leverage of military strength. It's vital to notice when examining the development of new military weapons that they truly give value in two separate areas of international disputes. While the apparent utility the B-21 gives will be in its combat capabilities, the second-order impact of that capacity is diplomatic influence. This leverage is the basis of big stick ideology, or an approach to international affairs predicated on Teddy Roosevelt's foreign policy axiom: speak softly and carry a large stick. Without the big stick, speaking gently to diplomatic opponents doesn't tend to go very far. But with a large stick like the B-21 Raider on hand, America's foes are obliged to listen, lest they run afoul of the big stick ideology and be met with the fighting end of it. By establishing the B-21 Raider as a platform that can neutralize China's hypersonic anti-ship arsenal, China will be left with two options: calling America's bluff and going to war, or acknowledging the strategic advantage America's new stealth bomber offers and staying seated at the negotiating table. Because so much of the global economy is based on Chinese and American markets, no nation stands to gain from conflict, but both nations benefit by posturing about it. China's anti-ship weaponry provide it the edge it needs to be aggressive when negotiating with or rejecting the objections of foreign nations. The B-21 Raider might disperse that perceived strength more evenly between opposing forces and compel a greater level of collaboration. There are various difficulties that would need to be cleared first. In order to know where China's sophisticated anti-ship assets are, America will likely need to re-establish its intelligence network within China. Starting in 2010, China got access to a secure CIA communication system that allowed them to methodically identify and kill CIA sources, destroying America's intelligence collecting capabilities within their nation. It seems likely that identifying hypersonic targets will require a combination of reconnaissance and human intelligence gathered from within China. The B-21 Raider would lead the way in a Sino-American war. Of course, if ties with China were to devolve into war, the United States would likely not choose to deploy soldiers to China's mainland, where the largest standing army on the planet would give China a major edge. Instead, the U.S. would likely keep the fighting at sea, blocking China's access to the global market and using stealth aircraft like the B-21 first to disrupt China's anti-ship capabilities, and then closing with Chinese shores enough to begin launching sorties of strike aircraft aimed at pounding China's military and industrial infrastructure into submission. Until the U.S. Navy can deploy an entirely new carrier-based fighter with a huge increase in range, China's anti-ship missiles give them the upper hand in a future battle with America's Navy. Yet, owing to the help of America's Air Force, that decisive advantage may be short-lived.